Hello, welcome back to the Sad Crime Channel. Today, I want to present a case where, after years, there was a major twist. If you want to learn the details of the tragedy that befell Michael Williams, stay tuned. Jerry. Michael Williams, known as Michael or Mike, was born on October 16, 1969. He grew up in Bradfordville, north of Tallahassee, Florida. He lived with his parents, his father, a bus driver, and his mother, who was a caregiver, raising him and his older brother Nick in a trailer. Instead of building a house, the parents saved money so both boys, who helped by working nights at supermarkets, could attend North Florida Christian High School. There, Mike excelled, serving as student council president, playing football and being active in the Key Club. At the age of 15, he began duck hunting as a hobby and also met fellow student Denise Merrill, who later became his wife. After North Florida Christian, he attended Florida State University, majoring in political science and urban planning. Before graduation, he was hired by Ketchum Appraisal Group as a property appraiser. He distinguished himself as the hardest-working man I ever saw, according to the company's owner. After marrying Denise in December 1994, he would often come home for dinner and return to work after she went to bed. Sometimes he would even go to work after an early morning duck hunt. The couple bought a home in an exclusive neighborhood in the eastern part of town. In 1999, their daughter was born. The next year, Mike's father passed away, and by mid-2000, Mike took out a life insurance policy to ensure his family would be financially secure if something were to happen to him. The policy, worth $1 million, was purchased through a trusted family friend, Brian Winchester, who had been friends with Denise and Mike since childhood. On December 14, 2000, Mike and Denise told their loved ones that they planned to try for another child. But before that, they had planned a trip to Hawaii in 2001. According to Denise, on the morning of Saturday, December 16, 2000, her husband woke up early and left home before dawn. He planned to go duck hunting on Lake Seminole, a large reservoir straddling the Georgia-Florida state line. That evening, Mike and Denise were supposed to celebrate their 6th wedding anniversary. By noon, Denise contacted her father, informing him that Mike hadn't returned from his hunt. She later called their friend Brian, who, along with his father, drove to the lake where Mike often hunted. There, near the boat ramp, they found Mike's car, a 1994 Ford Bronco. Investigators were called to the scene and the search began. However, it had to be paused shortly after due to an incoming storm. The Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission took over the investigation into Mike's disappearance. There was no evidence to suggest foul play, so the officers focused on searching the lake area where Mike's car had been found. They also used a helicopter, and soon the pilot spotted Mike's boat. Inside was his shotgun, but there was no sign of Mike. Searchers assumed that Mike had hit a stump with his boat, fallen out, and sunk into the deep water when his waders filled, causing him to drown. If this scenario were accurate, Mike's body should have surfaced within 3 to 7 days. Investigators informed the family they just needed to be patient. However, weeks passed and no body was found. The search continued until early February, at which point it was called off, though the case remained open. Lake Seminole had seen the disappearance of up to 80 other people whose bodies were never recovered. It seemed that Mike Williams had, unfortunately, joined that number. A private search firm explained that given the presence of alligators in the lake, it was possible Mike's body became tangled in dense underwater vegetation, was found by the alligators, and any remains were likely consumed by turtles and catfish. Denise Williams avoided the media during the highly publicized search, and after it ended, she held a memorial service. In June, an angler in the Stumpfield area found a pair of waders floating in the lake. Divers called to search the area recovered a lightweight hunting jacket and a flashlight from the lake bottom. In one of the jacket's pockets, they found a hunting license with Williams's name and signature. However, the waders showed no teeth marks or other damage. None of the recovered items appeared to have been in the water for the entire time Williams had been missing, and there was no DNA evidence to link the clothing to him. Despite this, a week later, a Leon County judge granted Denise Williams' petition to have Mike declared legally dead based on the recovered items, and the assumption that alligators and other water life had completely consumed the body. This court ruling allowed Denise to file claims on her husband's life insurance policies, from which she received $1.5 million. 5 years later, she married Brian Winchester, the man who had sold Mike some of the policies just months before his disappearance. The couple continued to live in the same house where Denise and Mike had lived. Denise and Brian have largely avoided public discussion of the case. Despite the passing years, Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, couldn't come to terms with what had happened. She didn't fully believe that her son had drowned and wanted the investigation reopened. Unfortunately, all her attempts were unsuccessful, so Cheryl continued her investigation on her own. She placed ads in local newspapers and put up billboards, hoping that Mike might still be alive. Her persistence was widely criticized, with many saying she was simply unable to cope with her loss. Her actions also strained her relationship with her former daughter-in-law. In 2004, after persistent lobbying from Cheryl and a friend, the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, FDLE, agreed to reopen the case. Normally, the FDLE doesn't get involved in missing person cases based solely on a citizen's request, but they can assist local agencies, which they did in this case. In hindsight, many officers agreed with Cheryl that the circumstances surrounding Michael Williams' supposed drowning were unusual and didn't align with that conclusion. For example, the boat launch where Mike's Bronco was found was just a muddy patch of ground, even though there were fully developed concrete launches nearby that Mike had used in the past. The storm the night after his disappearance had winds that should have blown the abandoned, unmoored boat across the lake to the Georgia side. When the boat was found, its engine was off and the gas tank was still full. According to the boat manufacturer, if the engine had been running when Mike supposedly fell out, it should have kept running in circles until it ran out of fuel. "Something sounds fishy with that," a company representative remarked after hearing the situation. Investigators also learned that Mike rarely hunted alone. "Something seemed unusual right from the start," said Arnett, from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, who initially thought it was a typical missing hunter case. Then, after a few days and weeks, those initial oddities seemed even more out of place. Additionally, investigators discovered that alligators are usually not active in winter months due to the cold temperatures. During the search period, daytime temperatures averaged around 55 degrees Fahrenheit or 13 degrees Celsius, with overnight lows dropping below freezing. Some nights were as cold as 19 degrees Fahrenheit, and searchers lit fires in 55-gallon drums to keep warm. The water temperature, already at 58 degrees Fahrenheit, 14 degrees Celsius, on the day Mike disappeared, dropped to 46 degrees Fahrenheit, 8 degrees Celsius, and the lake iced up to 20 feet, 6.1 meters, from shore. In those conditions, it is highly unlikely an alligator would have been active, said Mataresco, a local herpetologist consulted by authorities. All they would be doing is maintaining their body temperature. 58 degrees is too cold for an alligator to be interested in food at all. Even if animals had eaten Mike's body, there should have been some remains left behind. Mike was 5 feet 10 inches, 1.78 meters, and 170 pounds, 77 kilograms. Oresco stated that the idea of aquatic animals causing the complete disappearance of a full-grown man was a stretch. It would be very, very unusual. Mike's fishing boots, discovered almost 6 months after his disappearance, further cast doubt on the alligator theory. The boots were undamaged, the waders showed no teeth marks, and they lacked any residue that would typically accumulate on an object submerged in a lake for several months. The jacket and flashlight were also in much better condition than expected. Moreover, a friend of Mike's noted that he took safety very seriously and never put on his waders until he had reached the spot where he intended to begin hunting. Based on all the collected evidence, investigators started to believe that Mike had not died in the lake. However, reopening the investigation was difficult because during the initial inquiry, they had immediately assumed it was a tragic accident. As a result, the crime scene had not been properly secured. Mike's car and boat were not examined and were returned to his family. With no new leads or evidence, the case was closed in 2007, even though police were convinced that the theory of alligators consuming Mike was incorrect. However, A potential new lead emerged in October 2007 when Mike's older brother found a picture and the serial number of a .22 caliber pistol that once belonged to their father. Mike had inherited the gun after his father's death, and after he was declared dead, it was the only firearm that Denise Williams hadn't returned to her former mother-in-law. Jackson County Sheriff's investigator Wester asked the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco and Firearms, ATF, to look for the gun. Agents visited Denise and Brian Winchester at their house, the same one she had shared with Mike, to interview them. A few days later, their lawyer delivered the gun, which was sent to a forensic lab for DNA testing. However, the results of these tests were never made public. On the anniversary of Mike's disappearance, Denise and Brian made their first public statement on the matter. They said that for the past 7 years, they had prayed and hoped the case would be resolved, and that their greatest wish was for Mike to be found. In 2008, Kelly Cox, a self-proclaimed psychic and certified forensic specialist from Kentucky, pointed investigators to a location where she believed Mike's body might be. This lead was thoroughly investigated, but ultimately proved false. Despite yet another failed investigation, Cheryl Williams, Mike's mother, did not give up. Her efforts led to the airing of a 2011 episode dedicated to her son's disappearance on Investigation Discovery. Starting on New Year's Day. In 2012, Cheryl began writing 1 letter a day to Governor Rick Scott, asking him to either assign another agency to investigate or appoint a special prosecutor. After sending over 200 letters without receiving even an acknowledgement, she began investigating why. It turned out that the governor's office had forwarded the letters, unopened, to the FDLE, where they were placed in the case file. Cheryl was furious. "They could not have hurt me more if they had punched me in the face," she said. In 2012, Denise and Brian separated due to Brian's reported sex addiction. Denise filed for divorce in 2015. On August 5, 2015, a disturbing incident occurred. Denise reported to the police that her ex-husband had attacked and threatened her. As she left work, Brian got into the back seat of her car and threatened her with a gun. Brian said he was planning to take his own life because he didn't want the divorce and felt he had no reason to live without his wife. Denise managed to calm him down by promising not to tell anyone about the incident. However, as soon as they parted ways, she drove straight to the police station. Police questioned Brian's friends, and they revealed that Brian had told them he feared that after the divorce, Denise would tell the police what she knew about a man who had died many years ago. Brian was arrested and charged with kidnapping, assault, and armed burglary. Denise requested protection, fearing for her life and her daughters. The court ultimately decided to hold Brian in jail without bail until his trial. Meanwhile, Mike's mother hoped that this turn of events would lead to the resolution of her son's case, and at that time she still believed that Mike was alive. In 2017, Brian Winchester was sentenced to 20 years in prison for the kidnapping and remains incarcerated in Florida. At Brian Winchester's sentencing, no mention was made of the Williams case, but State Attorney Jack Campbell expressed hope that the case against Winchester might help authorities solve Mike Williams's disappearance. Winchester had reached a plea agreement with prosecutors, ensuring they would not seek a life sentence for kidnapping or present specific evidence during the hearing. What Winchester had to provide beyond his guilty plea remains undisclosed. The day after Winchester's sentencing, at a news conference, FDLE Special Agent Mark Perez announced that Mike Williams' body had been found and confirmed as a homicide victim. However, no details about the cause of death, suspects, or where the body was found were revealed, as such information was considered known only to the perpetrators. Later, FDLE revealed that Mike Williams's remains were discovered off Dead End Gardner Road in northern Leon County, 5 miles from where he grew up. DNA testing confirmed his identity, matching his mother's DNA. No further details were given at that time. On May 8, 2018, Denise Williams was arrested after leaving her workplace and charged with first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. Police disclosed that they had received information about the location of Mike's body in early October 2017. On October 18th, with the help of cadaver dogs, investigators recovered 98% of Mike's remains, along with well-preserved clothing, including winter gloves and boots. DNA testing confirmed that the remains belonged to Mike. Prosecutors asserted that Denise began conspiring with Brian Winchester in March 2000, 9 months before her husband's disappearance. It was believed that Brian shot Mike. Denise denied the charges, and her lawyer sought to have her cleared of all accusations. She was denied bail, and the trial was set for September 24th. During the trial, a recording of Brian's interrogation was played, in which he admitted to pulling the trigger and killing Mike, but claimed he did so at Denise's urging. Brian was the key witness, testifying that his affair with Denise began in 1997 while they were both married. The two couples often went on double dates, and Brian's wife eventually suspected her husband of infidelity. During the affair, Denise and Brian allegedly began plotting Mike's murder so they could be together. Divorce was not an option for Denise due to her religious family. Their initial plan was to stage a boating accident on the Gulf of Mexico that would kill both Mike and Brian's wife, but Brian decided against murdering the mother of his children. The final plan involved staging an accident during a hunting trip. On the day Mike disappeared, Brian lured him to the lake, where he forced him to wear his waders and pushed him out of the boat, thinking Mike would drown. However, Mike reached a tree stump, prompting Brian to shoot him in the face. Realizing a gunshot wound wouldn't be mistaken for an accident, Brian retrieved Mike's body, buried it, and then cleaned his vehicle before attending a family gathering. Prosecutors also played a recorded phone conversation between Brian's ex-wife, who was cooperating with the police, and Denise. During the call, Brian's ex-wife confronted Denise, claiming to know the truth about the crime. Denise repeatedly avoided the topic and, at one point, asked what his ex-wife knew. Her evasiveness and calm reaction when Brian's ex-wife recounted details of the murder suggested Denise's involvement.
We started meeting in hotels. We started meeting during the workday. The more we were together, the more we wanted to be together. Her biggest concern with the divorce was she didn't want to share custody of Ansley with Mike. Another scenario that we came up with was Mike and I going on a hunting trip together, and there being an accident where both he and I ended up in the water, and he drowned and I did not. Denise liked this idea because I don't know how to word it exactly, but she felt better, I guess, about herself, or we could feel better about ourselves if there was a chance that he could make it out of it. I think there was even talk about, well, it'll be up to God what happens and not us. It won't be a murder. It'll be, an accident. All of our conversations and planning and everything, I would say is very mutual. I'm not going to sit here and say that Denise planned everything and I was just a dumb guy who went along with what she wanted to do. I instigated a lot of it. I helped come up with ideas. I planned a lot of things. But overall, it was very mutual. We wanted to be together.
When you shot Mike Williams at Lake Seminole with the 12-gauge shotgun, was Denise Williams standing there with you?
No, she wasn't. She was in my head behind me.
She was in your head?
Mm-hmm.
Denise Williams had no idea that you shot her husband in the face with a shotgun, did she?
Correct.
She didn't learn, or would not have been able to learn, that you shot her husband in the face with a shotgun until after your proffer and testimony became public.
Actually, I tried to tell her about it one day, and she did not want to know the details. She told me that she assumed that obviously when his body was never found, that what we had planned did not happen, and that it never made sense to her that I was able to get to the shoreline, but he wasn't, but that it was okay, and we were forgiven, and we were like David and Bathsheba, and God was going to forgive us, and we didn't have to tell anybody about it, as long as we asked forgiveness from God. It was okay for us not to confess it to anybody else.
But to be clear, you never told Denise Williams that you shot her husband?
She didn't let me tell her that, no. And there never was a conversation that was like, well, did it all go according to plan? Or, first of all, I didn't want to talk about that because that was not the plan. What happened with Mike was not the plan that Denise and I had come up with. I mean, the plan was for him to fall in the water and for him to have a chance to survive it.
You got to jail on August 5th, 2016 on the charges of armed kidnapping. But you didn't straight away go to law enforcement and volunteer the details of the Mike Williams murder, did you?
Absolutely not.
In fact, while you were in jail, awaiting the resolution of your kidnapping case, you decided you were going to take certain steps to try to frustrate the prosecution of the armed kidnapping case. Isn't that true?
Yes, sir. I was desperate to do anything that I possibly could to avoid going to prison.
And that included obstructing justice, didn't it?
Yes, sir.
And to try to help yourself out of the situation that you had put yourself in with the armed kidnapping and with the obstruction of justice, you give to the state information related to where they can find the body of Mike Williams.
I was asked to provide any and all information that I knew about the Mike Williams case.
And you got the benefits that we talked about earlier, but you got one more benefit, didn't you? You got the benefit of seeing Denise Williams arrested, locked up, and brought to trial.
That's not a benefit.
You got the revenge for her putting you in the same situation you wanted to put her in.
No, sir. I wouldn't want to put anybody in this situation. She got herself in this situation.
Well, you would put your sister in the situation of tampering with witnesses?
I asked her for help, yes, sir.
You would put Kim Adams in the situation of tampering with witnesses?
Yes, sir.
You have a history of trying to plant evidence. You put a fake hat out at the crime scene where you shot Mike Williams in 2001, didn't you?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Winchester, you're a murderer, isn't it true?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Winchester, you're a liar, isn't it true?
Yes, sir.
Denise's defense argued there was no physical evidence linking her to the crime, but after a 4-day trial, the jury deliberated for just 8 hours before finding her guilty on all counts. In February 2019, Denise Williams was sentenced to life in prison. Mike's mother, Cheryl Williams, expressed relief, stating that justice had finally been served. She lamented that Denise had not only taken her son, but also her granddaughter. Mike and Denise's daughter inherited Mike's entire estate, including the insurance money initially meant for Denise. However, a condition was set. The daughter could not use any of the funds to cover her mother's legal fees. Should she attempt to do so, she would face a $150,000 penalty. Denise is currently serving her sentence in a Florida women's prison. In January 2020, Denise Williams appealed her conviction and life sentence, with her attorney arguing that no evidence linked her to the murder. In November 2020, her murder conviction was overturned, but the conspiracy to commit murder charge and its 30-year sentence were upheld. In April 2021, Florida's Attorney General appealed the reversal of Denise's murder conviction to the state's Supreme Court, citing conflicting legal precedents. However, the court declined to hear the appeal. Brian Winchester was charged only with kidnapping and aggravated assault. In exchange for his testimony against Denise, he was granted immunity from prosecution for Mike's murder. Thank you for listening to this story. Feel free to share your thoughts in the comments. Take care, and until next time.